Hello, everyone. Diana Rankin here. So good to see all of you today. Thank you for being here. For those who can come live, I'm really grateful. For those of you who, because for a variety of reasons, please know that we're deeply grateful that you're watching this and sending love to each of us and to our world. And that's what today is about. It's about a penny and what a penny has to do with love or fear. We're going to get into that in a moment here. I do want to remind you we will get a message from one of my books, The Master's Book of Answers by Phillip. And it's just an oracle book. You just opened any page. And you can do this actually with any book. You're looking for a message and you just opened any page and that's your message. So we'll get that right after I give you the information about a penny. I want to tell you this is from a talk I gave at the Universal Unitarians Fellowship. My tongue is getting caught there. Universal Unitarian Fellowship in Yellow Springs, Ohio. In January of this year. And I was thinking, I didn't have a question from any of you. And so I was thinking about what to say. And I thought, there's a part of that talk that I'm going to give to my friends, to my YouTube family. And so that's what we're going to talk about today and what it has to do, what fear and love have to do with a penny. And we'll talk about that. I want to thank you for your comments below, for your thumbs up. That's really helpful. And I want to say, if you have questions, if they're personal questions, just get a hold of me either by phone or email or whatever. My phone number is, I think it might even be in right below between the comments and here, but certainly my website is, and you can go to the website and learn about if you have a private question, just get a hold of me and we'll set up a session. But if you have a esoteric question of interest to our whole audience, please put it in the comments below. Or again, you can email it to me and we'll address that. So let's get going here. What does this little penny here, there's a penny, and what does that have to do with love or fear? Well, I was in Bob Evans recently. And when I like to pay cash, and so when I went to pay for my meal, she gave me my change back, and I looked and I said, "You owe me 2 pennies." And she said, "Well, no, there aren't any pennies, and we don't have pennies anymore. There aren't any pennies." And I kind of looked at her and I said, "Okay, thank you," and I left. By they, she said they don't have pennies anymore. And by they, she meant the federal government. Well, yeah, our current president did put a stop to minting pennies. Okay. So that said, I don't think the world is out of pennies yet. Or I don't think the U.S. is out of pennies yet. But excuse me, that's happened to me at a couple of different restaurants. So what I've started doing is I carry pennies with me, so I have the proper change. If I don't happen to have the proper change, I'm getting to the point where I'm using a credit card, and I don't like to do that. I don't think we're at a shortage of pennies yet. I think that's going to take a little while. You know what else that people think we're at a shortage of? Love. I don't think so. If you take the word love, L-O-V-E, and you flip it around and you add an extra V-E, guess what word you have? Evolve. And I think with love, we evolve to love. And sometimes we have to work at it. That's not to say we never get angry. That's why we're going to do this penny experiment shortly here. We do get angry. But do we want to live there? I don't think so. So our love, like the pennies, our love isn't lost in this country or it isn't lost in this world. Look around you. If there's somebody there with you, right next to you, just look at each other for a moment and feel the love between you. Feel the love between us. Feel the love in this community. Just feel the love because it's so strong. Think about the monks the Buddhist monks who just walked across from Texas to DC with a loca, the beautiful little doggie. Think about the love. All they did was walk, and at night they would talk. And think about the thousands and thousands, and probably millions of people that came out just to watch them walk. That's love, my friends. Their walk for peace, that's love. And I think all of us were affected by that, except maybe for those who don't live in love. So what we're going to do today, I want you to just think about this penny. I'm going to just put it up here so you can see it. Okay, so think about a penny you hold in your hand. And think about, there are two sides to a penny. Every penny has two sides, right? Every coin has two sides. We call it a head, and we call it, I don't know, what do we call the other side, the flip side? So every penny has two sides. Again, every coin, the same thing. Now, you can also, we're going to use a penny, but you can also do something like this, where you have two different colors. You might have a red and a green. So you can do that. Same type of thing, where you're going to hold one and then you're going to flip it to the other. But we're going to use a penny. Now, we know that every emotion is either based in fear or love. Let's think about that for a minute. Fear is anger, jealousy, hate, disgust, name-calling, depression, projection often. Whereas flip it, and it's love, it's kindness, empathy, understanding, self-care, self-love, joy, peace, happiness. Every emotion we experience is going to come out of either love or fear. And that emotion, the stronger we feel it, the more it's going to reverberate across the world. And certainly to those closest to us are going to feel it the strongest. That's how powerful we each are. Our feelings literally reverberate across the world. That's powerful, my friends. That's powerful. Okay, so I'm going to take this penny, and I'm going to hold up, excuse me, a piece of black paper here. And I'm going to hold this penny. This is going to be a little bit hard to see, but I'm going to hold this penny. And the reason I'm using a piece of black paper, and it's going to be hard because the room has a lot of light in it, but if this is how we can see the energy of the penny. Now, Einstein and science tells us everything is energy. Zip, zip, zip. Everything is energy, including the chair you're sitting on. So don't fall through. Everything is energy. And you've heard me talk about my first learning that, and I was able to walk through a wall. So look at the penny. I'm going to do my best to get this close to you. Okay, so look at the penny. And if you can, just relax and let yourself concentrate like you're going into a meditation. Just breathe and look at the energy of the penny. You might see that shadow of my hand and the penny turning a little bit lighter. If you don't see it, don't worry about it. There, maybe that would be better. If you don't see it, don't worry about it, because I'm in a room full of light and it's very hard to see the aura, that energy, when there's a lot of light around. If you're in a darker room, like when you're sleeping at night, if you want to see your aura, we'll get into that in a minute, but you could hold this penny up and you could see the penny's energy if it's in a darker room. That's why I'm trying to use a piece of dark paper here, but there's a lot of light in the room, so it may be hard to see. And again, I'm going to hold it as close as I can. And if you can see that penny, and again, the black is pretty light, so it may be hard to see the aura, the energy of the penny. But for the moment, I'm going to put that energy aside. Now, I'm going to use my hand, and I'm going to use my left hand. I'm right-handed, but I'm going to use my left hand for this experiment. And the reason I'm going to use my left hand is because that is attached to the right side of my brain, which is the creative side. So that's going to be a little bit easier to see using the left hand. So I'm going to this is what I want you to do on your own. And again, maybe I can get that closer to help you see it. And I want you to just let your hand be on the dark. And you can do this at night. And what I want you to do is think about something. I'm going to think about some time that I was mean to somebody in the last week or so. I mean, it could be a last year or so, or when I was a child, but I'm going to think about meanness. Okay, so I'm going to think about that cashier. I wasn't real nice to her. Actually, that happened again. And so before I asked if they had pennies, and she said no, so I gave a credit card. That's not I wasn't nice about it. I wasn't loving about it. So I'm going to think about that. And you're going to notice that as I do that, as I think about fear, I think about being mean, you'll have really a lot of trouble seeing my aura. Maybe if I turn it this way, you're going to have trouble seeing my aura. Or if you do, it's going to feel dark. And again, we're in a room with a lot of light, so that's going to be hard to see. But you can do this with a dim light or even no light. And you'll see that the aura is kind of dull. It's not very pretty at all. So you can do that and think about like a driver that cut you off, or that you wanted to maybe do a little finger speech to that person or whatever. So you think about fear, a fear-based emotion, and you look at your aura. Now, I want you to change that thought. And you're going to take this, the way you're going to do that is you're going to take this penny and you're going to pull it out of your pocket. And you're going to say, you know what? I'm not thinking nice thoughts about that cashier. And I don't want to do that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the penny over. And just that act of flipping the penny is going to help me no longer think the fear-based thought, the unkindness. Now I'm going to say, you know what? She was doing her best. And I'm going to send love to her. And I'm going to say, you know, let's send her love, because that poor lady, she doesn't have the easiest job in the world. And her boss is telling her they don't have pennies. And there are people, I'm sure, that are yelling at her. And I wasn't being very loving when I was there. So I'm going to send her love. And I can just think about the love I'm sending her. And then I'm going to send some love to her boss, because you know what? Her boss probably is not having a real good day either, a real good time, because people don't like this. Where's my other 2 pennies that you owe me? And then I'm going to send love to the bank. I'm going to send love off to the bank people. Now, while I'm doing this, I want you to notice how the aura around my fingers may change. All right. And then, what happens is it gets brighter, and you can kind of see that as we move out of the fear into the love. And again, it may be hard to see because the room is so lit up. So I'm going to keep thinking about that love. And I'm going to say, you know what? Those bankers are going through a tough time right now because people want pennies and they're not giving them pennies. Okay. And then I'm going to send love to their Federal Reserve and the people in charge of the federal banks and the investments. I'm going to send them love because, you know, they probably need it in today's economy. And then I'm going to send love to the President of the United States. Not someone I like, not someone I think is a good president, but I'm going to send him love because he's the one that came up with this idea of let's get rid of the penny. I'm going to just take a moment and send him love. Because how angry, how fear-based he must live. And you'll notice, and I just move my fingers a little because it's easier to see. You'll notice how, as I do that, the fingers, you can see the aura. I can see it coming off the ends of the fingers, especially. There's a white light there that wasn't there before when I was in anger. And I hope you can see it. If not, try this at home yourself. And you don't have to have a piece of black paper, just a dark room. A dark piece, black is the easiest to see. And you can see that. So we're just going to send love out to the world now. And as we send love, our own energy changes. Our own energy changes. I hope you can feel the difference in your own bodies as we've moved from fear-based to love-based. Just take a moment and be in that love-based emotion. Keep a penny with you, my friends, at all times. And when you start feeling the anger, and you have a right to feel anger, just flip the coin from one hand to the other. From in your own hand, just flip it and think, I'm changing from fear-based, from my anger, from my whatever. I'm changing it to love. And take a moment then and feel the difference. We think we have to do great acts to feel love. Well, we don't. Don't have to be great acts. I want to tell you 2 stories that changed my life, that helps me remember to move to love. And both of them happened. One happened when I was pretty young. I was 3 or 4 years old. And the other one, some of you have heard, happened when I was my first year in college. So I was like 17. Well, the 3 or 4-year-old, I lived with my grandmother when I was very young. I stayed with her a lot, or lived with her a lot. And she made me these adorable little ruffled outfits. And my grandmother was shy. And so in those days, she would not drive all the way into the city, which was Dayton. We lived north of Dayton, out in the country, and she would not drive all the way. But we would drive down to where the bus stop was, and then we would take the bus all the way into town. Well, I was an adult before I realized why we did that. And the reason we did that is after we would finish our lunch and finish our shopping, we would be at the bus depot. And my grandmother would sit me in these cute little ruffled outfits. She would sit me on one of the benches, and then she would sit a bench away from me where she could still watch me, but I looked like I was alone, right? Well, in those days, it was okay for children to be alone, even in bus stations, because bus stations, again, were country folk coming in that didn't want to drive in town often. And I remember this one older couple, not young. I was the young one. I was the youngster. Everybody that came up, they were old, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas. Now, I don't know their first names because in those days we called everybody Mr. or Mrs. So Mr. and Mrs. Thomas came up and they sat down by me, and Mrs. Thomas asked me if I was alone, and I said, no, that's my grandmother over there. And they started talking to me, and they mentioned about the cute little ruffles, and they then started up a conversation with my grandmother, who was sitting across from me. And my grandmother and I became friends for years with Mr. and Mrs. Thomas, who lived in what we then called an old folks home. We now call like assisted living, but we visited them for years. And my grandmother made 2 really beautiful friends because I smiled at strangers at the bus station. You know, my grandmother taught me to smile at strangers. My mother said, don't you dare. Now, I don't know why my mother didn't want me to smile at strangers, but I listened more to my grandmother than my mother. Sorry, Mom. And I was home from college, and it was Christmas time. And my mother and I were down at what was then Reich's department store. And Reich's later became Macy's. And they had these absolutely phenomenal Christmas windows. And again, this was Reich's at the time. This is how old I am. Remember, I'm 80 years old, my friends. And my mother and I were watching the movement because they had animated trains and such. And we were just so excited and happy about seeing this. And a woman came up beside us on my side, and I felt her sadness. And so I looked up at her and I smiled, and tears came down her face. And she thanked me for smiling. And she told me her child was in Children's Hospital. And the child wanted to know what the windows look like. And so the mother came down to see them and was going to go back and tell the child. And she said, my smile gave her the courage to do that. And she had hope for her child. So, my friends, love always wins. Bless my mother for telling me not to smile, and bless my grandmother for telling me to smile. Love always wins. Are you hearing right? Are you hearing right or left? If you hear right, we're in sync. If you hear left, that's a message you need to pay attention to. This is page 211. I always, it amazes me, and yet it doesn't at all surprise me, because it always happens that the message matches the message from here, from the Master's Book of Answers by Phillip. Messages. That message always is alignment with the message of our talk. All right, here it is. It's page 211. Window through which you view the world. You are the window through which you view the world. So, my friends, if you listen to a lot of news, you may need to stop for a while or cut it back if you can't handle it, and stay in love for a while and watch and listen to the things that make you feel good. And then create love in your life and in your world. And as, again, you are that powerful. As you create love in your life, not only do you feel happier, but you're sending that out to the world and helping others be happier. All right, page 210 says, if everyone thought alike, who would be the genius? If everyone thought alike, who would be the genius? So, we're all thinking differently, and that's okay. Recently, I had lunch with a friend, and we were talking about, it brought me a lot of sadness to see what happened to the East Wing of the White House. And it's just destroyed. And that brought me sadness, because many years ago, I had a friend who worked for then President Bush. And so my friend had a position that he was able, it wasn't a dating friend, it was a work colleague. And he was able to get my parents and my then husband and I a tour of the White House. And it wasn't the ordinary tour. In this tour, we actually got to look through, it was gated, a velvet hanger across it, but we got to look through into the Oval Office. We got to look into the cabinet room. And of course, we got to walk through the East Wing. I'm telling you, the energy was just phenomenal. And to see part of that destroyed hurts my heart. And so my friend, who votes differently than I do, she's a Republican, I'm not. And yes, she would vote Republican again. And we have a lot of alignment. We both believe in many of the same things. We believe in women's rights, et cetera, et cetera. We believe in don't ban books, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she said, why does that even bother you? It doesn't affect your life that the East Wing has been destroyed. And I said, yes, it affects my life. And she said, that's because you think with your heart and then your head. She said, I think with my head and then my heart. So unless it affects me personally, and she said, the destruction of the East Wing doesn't affect me personally. I thought about that. And this is a good person. This is not an evil person who goes out and goes, yay, magna. No, this is a person who just happens to be a Republican and agrees with some of the things that are happening today. And I don't. But we think differently, don't we? Does that mean I can't love her as my friend? Of course I can. Does that mean we can't get into discussions? Of course we can. And I think we have to. I think it's important. Because if everyone thought alike, who would be the genius? We don't all think alike. And our main message for everyone is you are the window through which you view the world. You are also the window who can change everything. All right. Sheila says, oh my, I forgot the live again. Well, we're glad you made it, Sheila. Thank you from Amsterdam. Sheila's coming from us in a whole nother part of the world, which is really exciting, I think. And hello, Malik. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. Forgive me. And she says, hi, Diana. Hello. And Sheila says again, hi, Diana. And she says, hi, everyone. Happy Friday. And Sheila also says, what is happening with the time? I was waiting for the live and forgot. And all of a sudden, it's 20 minutes later. And then Wendy says, glad to see this live. And I want to answer Sheila's, has time speeded up? Yes, it has. Yes, it has. And part of that is our world is moving faster. Part of it is as we age, time goes so much faster. You know, as we're kids, that day takes forever. And then suddenly we're 30, 40, 50, 60, or like me, 80 years old. And it's like, where did the time go? But yes, Sheila, in the normal everyday, time is going faster. And Sheila says, oh, interesting. And keep in mind, too, when we're busy, time goes very fast when we want to accomplish something. But when we're waiting for something, time does go very slow. So keep in mind also, there really is no time. And I'll leave you on that note. And again, my friends, get your pennies out. I love you. Thank you for the love that you give to yourself. Thank you for the love that you give to us. Thank you for the love you receive from us. And thank you for the love you send to the world. Love and peace, my friends. Love and peace. And Sheila says, thank you, Diana. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you.